My mother-in-law gave every grandchild a legacy journal except my child. That one's not blood, she muttered. My daughter wiped her face quietly. But that night, my son opened a letter addressed to me. Her voice cracked when she read it. Mom? Yeah, honey? Why didn't Grandma give Noelle a journal too? She gave me one, and Malia, and Ella. Why not her? I didn't know how to answer Jasper. My hands were in the sink, scrubbing the remnants of birthday cake off the plates. The silence stretched. She said something at dinner, he continued. Something about Noelle not being blood. My heart cracked a little hearing it come from my 15-year-old son. I turned the faucet off, dried my hands, and went to find my daughter. Noelle had turned 16 just 3 days before. The morning had started off bright. She wore her favorite rust-colored sweater, the one with the fraying cuffs that she refused to let me toss, and her hair was pinned up in a soft bun. She looked older, more thoughtful. We had a quiet celebration planned, her favorite lemon cake, lasagna, and the same ridiculous birthday crown she's worn since she was 8. Conrad grilled steaks even though it was still brisk outside. Sybil, my mother-in-law, came late. She always did. Made an entrance like we owed her something. That day, she was wearing a herringbone coat and leather gloves even though it was mild. She carried 2 gifts, both wrapped identically. One she handed to Jasper. From me, she said. You're old enough now. It was the legacy journal. I knew before he unwrapped it. The same kind Conrad got when he turned 16. The same kind Malia and Ella, Sybil's other grandchildren, received. Leather-bound, monogrammed, filled with handwritten letters, family stories, recipes, and, I suppose, Sybil's version of love. Noelle waited, politely. She didn't say anything. She just stood near the kitchen island, hands folded, smiling that quiet smile she wears when she's trying not to hope too hard. And Sybil just moved on. Sat down. Complained about the steak being a touch underdone. I kept glancing at Noelle. She kept her composure. Helped me clear plates. Laughed at Jasper's silly impersonation of their PE teacher. But when the last guest left and the house quieted down, I saw her in the hallway, back to the wall, wiping her face quietly with the sleeve of that old sweater. I didn't approach her. There are moments when comfort feels too much like pressure, when silence is the kinder gift. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared out at the porch light flickering, that faint yellow buzz, and I hated Sybil for the 100th time. I've tried with that woman. For over 17 years, I really tried. I met Conrad when I was 29. Noelle was barely 1. Her father, Jeremy, had walked out before her first birthday, left a note on the counter, packed 2 bags, and vanished. I never chased him. I think somewhere deep down I knew he was never cut out to be a father, or a partner. But when Conrad came into our lives, he came in completely. He never once referred to Noelle as his stepdaughter. Never introduced her that way. She was my daughter, our girl, my oldest. He read her bedtime stories, taught her to ride a bike, held her through fevers and nightmares. He signed every field trip form, every emergency contact sheet. And when she turned 10, she asked him if she could start calling him Dad. He cried harder than I did. But Sybil? She never looked at Noelle with softness. Tolerated her, sure. Bought her gifts at Christmas. Included her in family photos, but always had her off to the side. Never framed her school pictures in that hallway of grandkids' portraits she proudly displayed at her house in Charleston. And she'd made her opinion clear when Conrad told her he planned to marry me. She's already got a child? That's not a clean start, Con. You're inheriting baggage. She never said it to my face. Always through carefully phrased remarks, a tone of voice, a sidelong glance. That refined cruelty some people perfect over years of repressed feelings and cocktail parties. After Noelle's birthday, I finally asked Conrad to confront her. I was chopping carrots, the blade hitting the cutting board a little harder than it needed to. She didn't give Noelle a journal, I said. He stopped rinsing rice and looked up. Are you sure? Maybe she forgot. She didn't forget, I said, too sharply. Then softer, she had one for Jasper. She knew. He called her that night. I only heard his side of the conversation. A lot of that's not right, and she's my daughter, blood or not, and one sharp, don't ever let her hear you say that again. He hung up looking exhausted. She said Noelle's not blood. That the journals are a Cartwright tradition, for blood descendants. That night, Jasper found the letter. He'd been rummaging in the den for a charger and opened the drawer where we keep old mail. The envelope was thick, yellowed at the edges. Mom, this has your name on it. The handwriting was elegant. Slanted. A style no one uses anymore. It was addressed simply to Dana Mercer, with no return address. Postmarked from Charleston. The date, 12 years ago. I opened it at the dining room table. Noelle was still up, scrolling through something on her phone. I asked if she wanted to read it aloud, thinking maybe it was something from an old friend. She nodded. As she read, her voice cracked. It was from Conrad's grandmother, Eleanor Cartwright. Sybil's mother. A woman I only met once before she passed. If this ever reaches you, the letter began, then Sybil has done what I feared she might. She's denied the bond you have with this family, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. She continued, you don't need blood to carry a legacy. You need loyalty. You need love. That girl, your Noelle, she is the strongest thread in this family's future. She is worthy of every story, every recipe, every whispered secret and unspoken strength. Noelle's voice broke again at the last part, family is not inherited. It is chosen. And I choose her. I chose you. If Sybil buries this, it only confirms her heart is smaller than I dared to imagine. The letter included instructions to a safety deposit box. I didn't sleep that night. Conrad took off work the next morning. We drove to the bank Eleanor mentioned, a small branch tucked into a quiet corner of downtown Asheville. It felt surreal, like we were chasing ghosts. But when we presented the letter, the clerk didn't blink. He asked us to wait. 5 minutes later, we were sitting in a quiet room with a steel gray box placed in front of us. It was real. Inside, 2 packages. One addressed to me, and one to Noelle. And what was inside? Well, I'll share that next. Because it changed everything. The room was cold. Banks always are, for some reason. Too much steel, too many walls. Conrad sat across from me, the metal box between us like it might contain something dangerous, or sacred. We didn't say anything right away. The silence wasn't tense, but heavy. Like something important was about to shift. I opened mine first. It wasn't a journal exactly, it was more like a folder, thick with pages, carefully organized. Each sheet was a letter. Some written to me, others general stories, and a few even addressed to the woman who loved my grandson when he needed it most. I felt my throat tighten as I read the first few lines. I never met you properly. And I regret that. But I watched you, once, at Conrad's wedding. You smiled at everyone, even those who didn't smile back. You looked at my great-granddaughter like she was something brand new, something the world hadn't seen before. You called her Noelle. What a name. What a light. There were stories about her own life, growing up in Charleston during the 1940s, the pressure of debutante seasons, the man she wanted to marry but couldn't because he was Jewish, the miscarriage she never spoke of publicly. She wrote about resilience, and stubbornness, and softness, not as weakness, but as strength misunderstood. One letter stood out. I asked Sybil, years ago, what she thought of you. She said you were quiet, too ordinary, too safe. But that's what I liked about you. Safe women make steady families. They build legacies the loud ones only talk about. Sybil doesn't know this, but I altered the journal tradition before I passed. I made copies. I left something for the girl who isn't blood, because blood lies. But love, when it's real, that stays. I hadn't realized I was crying until Conrad stood up, walked behind me, and placed a hand on my shoulder. Noelle's package was different. It was wrapped in old tissue paper, the kind that goes yellow and brittle after enough years. There was a leather-bound book inside, but not like the one Sybil gave. This one had a different cover, soft navy leather, embroidered in faint gold thread. On the front, Legacy Beyond Blood. Noelle turned it over in her hands like she was holding a relic. And then there were the extras. A pendant, small and oval, with Eleanor's initials engraved on the back. A note attached to it simply read, "You'll know when to wear this. Not when you want to, but when someone else needs to see it." There was also a photo, black and white, creased in the corners, of Eleanor as a young woman. She had the same intense brow as Noelle. Same deep-set eyes. Same serious mouth that didn't always smile, but meant it when it did. It hit me then how odd it was that Sybil could look at this child and not see any of herself reflected. Noelle didn't share Conrad's blood, but she carried something from Eleanor, something in her spirit, her gaze, the way she watched before speaking. We didn't tell Sybil right away. We didn't need to. I left a voicemail a few days later. Calm. Almost too calm. "Hi Sybil. Just wanted to let you know we visited Eleanor's deposit box. It seems she had some thoughts about Noelle. And about Legacy. I won't repeat them all, but I think you'd benefit from reading her words." I didn't wait for a reply. There wasn't one. A week passed. Then 2. No birthday cards. No calls. No check-ins. Jasper asked where she was. Noelle didn't. And maybe that was the real punishment. That her absence felt less like a loss and more like quiet finally settling in. A few weeks after the letter surfaced, Noelle started writing in the journal Eleanor left her. Not every day, just occasionally. Late at night, after homework, when the house was still and the hum of the fridge was the only sound. She never told me what she wrote. I didn't ask. But once, I peeked. Not at the words, just at the inside cover. There, in her own handwriting, she had copied a line from Eleanor's letter. "You don't need blood to carry a legacy. You need loyalty. You need love." It made me feel something I hadn't expected to feel through all of this, peace. Not victory, not revenge. Just peace. But that peace didn't last long. I hadn't planned to return to Charleston anytime soon. But a funeral forced our hand. Sybil's sister, Aunt Maura, passed away in early spring. She was the warm one in the family, the one who used to send postcards to Noelle just because she had the prettiest penmanship. Her death was sudden. And Sybil, like always, made the event about herself. We drove down on a Friday morning. Long stretches of highway, trees budding, the smell of wisteria and salt in the air. Noelle brought the journal with her, tucked into her bag like a talisman. The church was grand, whitewashed columns, stained glass, the works. Most of the Cartwright family was there. Stiff hugs, cold air kisses, polite condolences. And Sybil. She stood like stone next to the casket, dressed in black silk, eyes dry. She didn't look at Noelle. But she looked at the pendant. Noelle wore it over her blouse, just as Eleanor had instructed, not when you want to, but when someone else needs to see it. That was the moment something changed. Sybil's eyes narrowed, not in cruelty, but confusion. Like she was seeing a ghost. Or a memory that wouldn't let itself be buried. Sybil didn't say a word to us at the funeral. Not even to Conrad. She greeted others like a seasoned hostess, air kisses, light laughter, a thin smile as she accepted condolences. But when she saw Noelle across the church hall, standing beside me, wearing Eleanor's pendant, she froze for just a breath too long. It was subtle. Barely a flinch. But I noticed. Noelle did too. She looked at me like she wasn't sure who I was, Noelle whispered later, while we were standing in line for overcooked green beans and lukewarm ham at the reception. Like she couldn't decide if I was real. And maybe she couldn't. Because the pendant wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was Eleanor's voice, Eleanor's choice, made visible. And Sybil had never been confronted with a symbol she couldn't control. Back at the hotel that evening, Noelle and I sat on the balcony. The Charleston air was sticky, heavy with magnolia and ocean, and neither of us said much. Just sat with a shared knowing. I think I remind her of someone, Noelle said, finally. Someone she hated. Or maybe someone she loved. I don't know which is worse. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know either. That night, Conrad got a call. I heard the muffled buzz of his phone through the bathroom door as I brushed my teeth. When I came out, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, hunched over, shoulders tense. He looked up at me with tired eyes. That was my cousin Lyle. He said Sybil asked about the pendant. What did he say? He told her it belonged to Eleanor. That it had been passed down. He paused. And then she got quiet. Said something about how Eleanor always had her secrets. I felt a flicker of something cold pass through me. Not quite fear, not quite anger. Just that shiver you get when someone you've tried to forget starts paying attention again. The next morning, we found an envelope slipped under our hotel door. No name. No handwriting. Just a hotel stationery envelope, folded shut with a paperclip. Inside, a photo. Black and white, grainy, taken sometime in the early 1970s. 2 women standing beside a white fence. One of them was Eleanor. The other was a young woman with dark curls, holding a baby. Written on the back, in faint pencil, Miriam, 1972. Her girl, too. That's all it said. We stared at it for a long time. Who's Miriam? I asked. I don't know, Conrad said slowly. I've never heard the name. Do you think it's her child? Maybe. Or maybe it's someone Sybil was trying to erase. Noelle was still asleep, curled under the hotel's thin comforter, her journal tucked beneath her pillow. We didn't show her the photo. Not yet. When we got back home, the silence from Sybil resumed. No calls. No passive-aggressive texts. Not even a forwarded email of some outdated family newsletter. It was eerie, how quiet things had become. Like the eye of a storm. Then, about a week later, we got a call from Sybil's lawyer. He asked for a meeting. Nothing serious, he said. She's just revising a few things. Wants to clear the air. Conrad was immediately suspicious. Why now? What changed? I didn't have an answer. But I agreed to go. Maybe I was tired of holding so many fragments of this family's broken history. Maybe I just wanted to look the woman in the eye and ask, why? What did a child ever do to deserve your silence? We met at her home in Charleston. The same white-columned house where she'd held garden parties and bridge games and birthday dinners over the years. The same hallway still lined with carefully framed photos of all her grandchildren, except Noelle. She greeted us in the foyer with her usual cool detachment. Conrad. Dana. Come in. No hug. No pleasantries. I scanned the entryway. Still smelled like lavender polish and secrets. Her lawyer, Mr. Ridley, was already seated in the parlor. This won't take long, he said, adjusting his glasses. Mrs. Cartwright asked that we update her estate documents. She's decided to include all grandchildren equally. The words hit the room like a dropped teacup. Sybil didn't flinch. All grandchildren? Conrad asked slowly. Yes, Mr. Ridley confirmed. Including Noelle. I looked at her then, really looked. Her face was pale, drawn. But not apologetic. She said nothing. No explanation. No acknowledgement. Just bureaucracy. A shift in the paper trail, not the heart. Conrad thanked Mr. Ridley politely, like he'd been raised to. But I couldn't stop staring at her. When we stood to leave, I turned back. She met my eyes for the first time in years without flinching. "I saw the photo," I said quietly. She looked away. "Was Miriam your sister?" A beat passed. Then she answered, softly, with something close to grief. "She was, my mistake." And that was it. No elaboration. No confession. No apology. Just the skeleton of a truth, left to hang in the air like perfume. We drove back in silence. Noelle didn't ask what happened. She just curled up on the couch that night with her journal open and began to write again. Sometimes I think she's documenting all of this, not just for herself, but for someone else one day. Her own children, maybe. Or a niece. Or someone like her, on the outskirts of a legacy, waiting to be seen. And sometimes I wonder if Sybil's sudden change wasn't about guilt at all. Maybe it was fear. Fear of being forgotten by the one person she never made room for. Weeks passed after that strange, silent meeting in Sybil's home. She'd done what she intended, had her lawyer add Noelle to the will, equal to the others, almost like it was nothing. No apology. No ownership. No warmth. But something in her face haunted me after that brief visit. That crack in her composure when I mentioned Miriam. I did some digging, not out of malice, just curiosity. It took some effort. Old public records. A few phone calls to elderly relatives who barely remembered their own birthdays. But I pieced it together. Miriam Cartwright was Sybil's younger sister. The free one. The one who left Charleston in the late 60s and never looked back. Fell in love with a black man, a jazz pianist, no less, which, in Sybil's family, was considered a wrongdoing beyond repair. She had a baby, a girl. No marriage. No apologies. And Sybil? She cut her off. Somewhere along the line, Miriam's daughter, her niece, must have grown up, had children of her own. Maybe she even met Eleanor. Maybe Eleanor kept her close, secretly. Left that journal for Noelle not just because she believed in chosen family, but because she remembered what it was like to watch a child be erased. And Noelle reminded her of Miriam's daughter. Of all the things that could have broken Sybil's perfect narrative, this was the one she couldn't control. A child she had excluded, unknowingly tied to the one she had tried so hard to ignore. The realization made me smile, just a little. Prom was in late April. Noelle wore a navy dress that matched the journal's leather cover. Simple. Elegant. She borrowed Eleanor's pendant again. Said it made her feel like someone was walking beside her. She was voted prom queen. I swear I'm not making that up. And when she came home, shoes in one hand, tiara askew, cheeks flushed from dancing, she pulled me into the kitchen and said, "Mom, I'm gonna write about tonight. I want to remember what it feels like to be fully seen." That was when I knew Sybil had already lost. She'd spent years trying to write Noelle out of our story. But Eleanor wrote her in. And Noelle wrote herself in. Line by line, page by page. The real revenge, though, came a month later. Noelle was asked to speak at her school's senior banquet. Just a short reflection on growth, gratitude, and legacy. She debated saying no, she's not the type who loves a microphone, but she agreed after some gentle nudging. The gym was decorated with strings of lights and gold streamers. Folding chairs. Punch that tasted like carbonated Kool-Aid. Sybil was there. She made a rare public appearance, seated in the third row, pearl necklace gleaming, mouth drawn tight. Noelle stepped up to the podium in a soft gray dress, her hair braided, the pendant resting just below her collarbone. She didn't look at Sybil once. But her words found her. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about what we inherit," she said. "Not just money or last names or eye color, but stories. Expectations. Silences." Someone cleared their throat in the audience. The gym was hushed. "I didn't inherit much in the traditional sense," she continued. "But I was given something better. Someone who wasn't related to me by blood, once said I was chosen. Not born into a story, but written in with intention. And that's the legacy I'll carry forward. She smiled at us, me and Conrad, and then straight ahead. To the people who see you even when others don't. That's your real inheritance. That's your story. And you get to write it however you want. People stood when she finished. The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was meaningful. A few teachers wiped their eyes. Conrad looked stunned. Jasper cheered from the back. Sybil sat stone still. But her eyes glistened. And for the first time in all the years I'd known her, she looked not just small, but lost. 2 months later, she called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I saw her speech. I understand some things now. I'm sorry. I deleted the message. That was my closure. No dramatic confrontation. No screaming match. Just silence, my choice this time. I didn't need her apology. We had already won. Because Noelle got her journal. She got her legacy. She got her story back. And Sybil? She got to watch it all unfold, from the outside looking in. Exactly where she had placed Noelle all those years ago.